Good morning. Today we're going to operate our pump, excuse me, you got me going. We're going to operate our brush rig. Its classification is 2551 and it's basically a 1-ton diesel pickup with a 500-gallon tank on the back and an independent pump. To start it, you get in, there is a rocker arm master switch on the dashboard. You turn the ignition switch to where the glow plug comes on. Wait until the glow plug goes out. It's the motor to keep the batteries charged. With the master switch on and the rig running, you can see that the panel is lit up. The panel has ignition on. It has a choke. It has a throttle that you put into the middle position. An engine start button. Once you get the engine started, you let it warm up. You add a little throttle. You'll notice that your pressure gauge is now reaching almost 100 pounds. When you're going to operate your booster line, go to the booster line, get it open. You send one of your crew to the booster line. You reach back. You turn the booster on. That gives them water. You always make sure that your valve that runs water from your tank to your pump is on, and then you can adjust the throttle to give them a little bit more pressure, and that'll show the speed that you get. When you shut down, you do the opposite. And one of the things that is nice to do is to be able to gauge the size by just looking.
Yep.
This one's inch, this one's inch and a half.
Yep.
So, because you don't want to grab the wrong one, run 100 feet and have to run all the way back. So, these are 1-inch nozzles. These are 1-inch nozzles. This is a 1.5 to 1 inch gated Y. This is a 1.5 to 1 inch gated Y. This is a 1.5 to 1.5 gated Y, which typically wouldn't use, but by simply putting on one of these adapters, you can make it. So if people start stealing your stuff, and this is kind of a supply rig for other rigs too, so somebody will come by and say, I need an 1.5 to 1.5 gated Y. You hand them this, even though we typically wouldn't use it. If they say, I need an 1.5 to 1 inch, reach in and grab the two, what they call flat caps. And you say, here you go. And then they can grab one or two lengths of hose.
Flat cap, is that like it's called is it a reducer or is it called a flat cap?
It is a reducing flat cap.
Okay.
So this is the, if somebody comes to you as a pump operator with a 1.5 supply line, which we've had before, you take the cap off, leave the double threaded on that 2.5, screw that in, screw this in, and they, like if they brought you the pre-connect from the pumper.
Right.
They take the nozzle off that pre-connect, you've got threads. Okay, put it into here, turn it on, and that'll supply you.
So everything you need is right there.
Everything you need is
if they
right
mess
there.
it up, you can still make it work.
So there's 3 1.5 nozzles. There's 3 1-inch bayonet type nozzles, and 2. Try not to use these unless you have to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And if you start to have trouble, these are the little wrenches that you can tighten fittings with. So we'll leave that out. When we take the hydrant, and what I'll do is we'll kind of go through that relatively slow. We'll have the nozzle spring, and I'll show you how to make that connection from using the booster tank as your primary source of water to making that conversion to where you're going to use the hydrant. Because after 10 minutes, you've got to make that switch. And to do it, you want to do it in a certain sequence so that you fill your tank up without blowing it out the top. And I'll show you how to use lights. So in the meantime, let's do that. The classic evolution where we pull up to a scene. One of the crew takes the booster line. He can just stand there, just spray water. Somebody else takes the 1.5 inch, bowls it out properly, grabs an 1.5 to 1 inch gated Y, hands the coupling end to the pump operator, takes the gated Y and the threaded end, walks down. While you're walking, see if you can put that on. Set it down, make sure the valves are shut, and the easiest way to make sure they're shut is to look. When they're open, they look like that, and when they're closed, they look like that. The other thing, if you're a plumber, if the quarter turn ball valve is perpendicular to the line, it's closed. If it's parallel to the line, it's open. So you set it down, make sure it's closed, and if you're by yourself, then you sprint back, grab a 1 inch line and a nozzle, bowl it out on the way, grab the thread, the coupling, put it in, put the nozzle on, and you're out in action. As soon as this is on and as soon as you verify it's closed, you can whistle or yell and say, "Start it!" So then you've got control of your own water supply. Once the pump operator delivers water to this implement, then you're in charge of turning it on and off. Okay?
And then you wait for somebody else to come bring the other line. At least you're starting at least one side of the Y.
So when we do this, we're not hooking up any 1 inch lines to it. We're just putting the gated Y on for now.
No, you're going to put a gated Y on, and depending on instructions from your officer, you're either going to, one of you are going to take over the booster line while you send the next youngin down the line, or however you wish to do that. In a four-man crew, typically speaking, there's only going to be 2 or at most 3 actually driving the apparatus. So what would end up happening is, more than likely, if South Shores had an incident, Dean or Eric or I would drive this to the scene, get out, function as incident commander, and you guys would run out and I'd say, advance the booster line down that driveway, protect the exposure, or whatever the scenario is. So more than likely, as a group, you would be coming POV, personally owned vehicle, and be assigned tasks.
So if you had 3 people come in the truck, one person would be the incident commander and the pump operator. He'd have 2 jobs, so the other 2 guys could run the lines out and operate.
Typically speaking, the first arriving apparatus's officer, which is the person that sits there, would, and we'll go over some of this radio protocol, but if it's Dean or Eric or Dave or I, which is logical because Eric's here, Eric would pull onto the scene and he would probably relay back to me what was going on. If I was up at my place responding, he'd either say we have a 10-foot by 20-foot area on fire between lot 18 and 19. Flames are now 5 feet tall. They're moving up the hill. The wind is approximately 5 or 6 miles an hour. Rate of spread is 4 or 5 feet per second. Or he'd relay back information so that I could say, or whoever would say, Eric, you're 2551. 2503, it will be Huckleberry Command. I need that pump truck. Teresa and Doug, are you available to respond? Swartley, David Bell, are you available to bring the fireboat? And so whoever's taking care of business on the scene on the ground is primarily running the piece of equipment, and the command would transfer back to somebody who would be analyzing and sending help. And since I kind of know what I'm doing, it would probably be me. So I wouldn't be necessarily, I would be more 10,000 foot views, make sure we're all safe. Yeah.